What's the deal, everybody? Welcome back to the office. Jeremy Dio here, and today we're bringing back an older segment, Help Me to Help You. I get asked to help a lot of people review images or videos or stuff like that to just help them enhance their craft. And this was done by a fellow subscriber or watcher just like yourself, probably. So he's allowed me to bring these on here to make a better review of his images for himself. So these are all drone images, and these are basically my reviews. I'll be looking a little bit off screen so I can read a few data points that I have here, and I'll be throwing up the images that I'm talking about on the screen randomly while I talk about them. So, number one thing to think about. Let me scroll up over here, look at these images real quick. Now, as I look through all these images, the very first thing that I notice is that they all seem to be really close to the house and less than 100-foot AGL, if I had to guess. At least all of them but one. One of them looks nice and high up. Now, keep in mind, the reason agents are getting drone photos is because they want to showcase the plot of land that it's on and where that plot of land sits, at least usually. Now, don't get me wrong, throwing in a few close-up images of the house is a very good thing, and they do expect those, but they don't want that to be all of the drone shots, because keep in mind, before you get there, they've hired a traditional photographer that takes ground photos. So some of these shots that you have in here will go after like number 0114. You definitely do not need. All of these front exteriors that clip off the front, you don't need. But what you do need are some shots that are high up. Like look at 0123. Take that's a good example, but you need one of those from the front, and then you need one from as high up as you're allowed to fly that showcases the area around it, because like I said before, that's really what they're trying to do here. They're trying to showcase where this piece of land is. Let's see what I have next. Okay, just continuing off that point, it's like it's very important. Most of the time, these drone images, they want to showcase how close it is to important things like schools or shopping or medical or stuff like that. That's what these drone images are really for, or at least that's exactly what these agents want these drone images for. So as I look through this, I notice one thing. You do have a lot of images for delivery, but they are all very repetitive and kind of the same. So that would be my number one point. My number 2 point would be to really nail exposure, especially when you're using smaller drones or anything under a Mavic 3. Now, I use the Air 2S a lot, so I have a lot of experience here, and it's also an issue I encounter quite often, but trying to remember to not be afraid of the shadows and darks and let those ride in order to preserve detail and highlights. See, all of these smaller drones, they're really bad at bringing back stuff from highlights or highlight recovery. Unfortunately, that's just the way they're built. So whenever I'm doing video and drone work for photos, I'm always exposing dead at exposure or even a little bit under sometimes, because the very first thing that kind of makes your images or videos look amateurish, for lack of a better term, is having blown out highlights. That's the last thing you want to do. Now, once again, like I said just a minute ago, I am still culprit of this exact same thing because we're trying to show as much of the property, so we want to show into those shadows, but don't ever dive into the shadows enough that you completely lose your highlights. And we'll talk about in very specific, which is my favorite image of yours, number 0123. That's my favorite image, right? But you can tell that you are going after the shadows and not the highlights by looking at the concrete around the pool. That's the place in particular where you lose a lot of that highlight data, and then you're also losing it a little bit on the houses. And like I said, don't be afraid of the shadows, don't be afraid of the darks. That's how it looks naturally, but do be afraid of losing all of your data in the highlights. Now we're going to go over, I'm just going to kind of read off of my list because this is directly about these images, so I'll post them all up on the screen so everyone watching can follow along. So when you look at images 0112, 113, and 122, they're all basically the exact same image. Pick one and go. Agents hate to have multiples or duplicates of the same image. They want it to be a little bit different, and realistically, these are so similar that you should only pick one. Number 0114 is not really needed because the ground photographer will have a much more appealing view of this porch/raised deck area. Of all your exteriors, 0120 is the only front exterior worth keeping. If you can't show the entirety of the front of the house, then try not to do it in drone photography in particular. Just keep in mind, if you've got to cut off the sides of the house with your drone, it's not worth it, and the ground photographer probably has a way better shot. So not only are you wasting your agent's time by supplying something they probably have a better version of, you're also wasting your time because you're the one flying down low, and that probably means you're flying close to trees or telephone poles or something else that makes it a little dangerous for your drone. So you're flying in a high risk area for basically no reward because the agent will probably not use that image. All right, lastly, number 0121. An agent would never use that image. You may think it looks cool on site, but agents actually hate imagery that shows drastic elevation changes on their property. It's a downside, and it will cause people to not come look at the property in real life. So if you have a front yard that has a super steep driveway that people have to park on, agents don't want you to show that. If you've got a backyard that 10 foot from the back door drops off into a cavern, agents don't want you to show that. They don't want to see anything that could be a detractor from someone to come view the property in person, because in person is where houses really sell. So even though you may think it looks cool and it's a cool angle, if you're showcasing negative parts of the property that the agent would never highlight, then once again, you're kind of wasting your own time on site and wasting your editing time back because they'll never use that angle. All right, now out of these images, which ones would I deliver? So out of the 12 images, I would deliver 0122, 0120, 0116, and 0123, which I already mentioned is my favorite shot of all of yours so far. The rest of these images are kind of useless for the agent, especially in terms of repetitiveness. So you have a lot of pictures close up of the front exterior that are not needed. As I mentioned before, ground photographer probably has more of those that look better. You really want to highlight the property from a shot that a ground photographer can't get. There's no real need to put your drone 20 feet above the ground and take a photo when the photographer can put his camera 15 feet above the ground and take a photo, and that camera will look better than your drone camera no matter what. So just keep that in mind. Now, I have actually made a folder of my own typical drone delivery. Now, keep in mind, most of the drone work I do are actually add-ons, since all I do, or the majority of my business, is traditional ground MLS photography. So most of my deliveries are only about 5 images, but we do get hired to do just strictly aerial stuff. And so I'm gonna put a link down below to a folder where you can see a typical drone delivery that I give to my clients, and you can compare it to these images directly so you can really see the difference in the two. Now, keep in mind, when looking at my images, I made sure to pick something that was kind of similar to yours. It's very easy to get these open wide shots in a property out in the middle of the country or wide open real estate. But whenever you're in suburbia or close to a city or tight end streets with lots of electrical cords, it can make things more difficult. So the link that I have down below is actually of one of those scenarios. So you don't think I'm just kind of cheaping out and giving you an easy example. This is an example very close, I would assume, to like this property is. That's it. Thanks, Stanley, for submitting the stuff. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I hope this helped you a little bit. And as always, keep rocking and rolling. Enjoy what you're doing. Make smart business decisions. If you want to see the review on the Insta360, you can check that out over here. If you want to check out some of the videos I produce for my clients, you can check that out over here. And as always, I will catch you next time.